I am so excited today to come here and talk about delegation with you. And I thought for a unique twist, instead of actually just breaking down what the workshop would be about, I would work through a case scenario with you. So let's start with that. I'm actually going to talk about a client of mine who I still work with, who is a head of school. She came to me 3 years in her tenure and was having difficulty coming to a conclusion around curriculum development. And so her and her curriculum director were going back and forth regarding a reading curriculum called the Science of Reading and whether or not to incorporate it into their school system. So when working with her, we started to have a lot of conversation around why this particular decision just couldn't be made. So the first thing we did was we worked through a delegation readiness profile. This is a profile that I created that is actually a diagnostic. And what it does is it brings you through 25 questions. And when you answer those questions, it puts you into one of five leadership categories where you actually score the lowest. So I want to read to you the category that she was the lowest in. And it was through authority ownership. So she scored the lowest with these questions. I clearly name who owns the decision, not just who completes the task. I resist stepping back in when the outcome of a delegation makes me uncomfortable. Ownership does not automatically return to me when something goes wrong. I delegate both the task and the authority to make decisions about that work. I let delegated work succeed or fail without taking on the responsibility for it. And she was low in all of these things. So from there, we discovered that she was a responsible leader. And what being a responsible leader is, it actually means she's a responsible leader. She's a responsible person. But what it also means is that she is involved in every single delegation, every single outcome that happens in the school. So every decision needs to come back through her for final approval. That is not sustainable. So knowing that, we started to work through a three-part delegation framework. The first part is ownership transfer. You have to name who owns the decision, but not only name who owns the decision, but who owns the outcome. The second part is outcome clarity, being very specific about defining success and also naming those constraints. They need to be named in advance, not when a rework cycle comes back around. So if you're talking about timelines or resources, those all need to be named up front. And three is having a sustainable check-in structure where you're not hovering or just popping in, but you actually have a scheduled review point and you can define those escalation triggers. So those things that actually need your involvement or your re-involvement need to be defined up front. From there, we actually worked through a worksheet. So she was able to take this curriculum decision and plug it into the three-part framework. And what I'm going to do is actually read some of the notes that I took when we were going through this process and the conclusion that we came up with. So again, in the three-part framework, you have to have all three. You can't have one or two. If you don't have all three, the delegation actually is never successful. So you need ownership transfer, outcome clarity, and check-in structures. What we found through doing this worksheet was that she had outcome clarity. Both her and the curriculum director knew exactly what they wanted the outcome to be. They had check-in structure. They were meeting regularly to talk about this. What they didn't have was ownership transfer. So some of the notes that I took with her, I wrote, the decision had never been named explicitly. Team members prepared recommendations rather than making decisions. Every significant choice returned to the head for final approval. No one had told them that they did not need to check in with her. From there, the head of school and I worked through a process of trying to find authority holding language and working through that actual ownership transfer so that the next time she met with the curriculum director, she could use it. You know, we wanted her to go from, hey, can you put together a recommendation for me around our reading curriculum to something very specific. So this was the script that we created together. You own the curriculum decision. A success looks like a program that is faculty supported and ready to implement by fall. The only thing that comes back to me is if it requires a budget change above the agreed upon amount. Everything else is yours to finalize. In that one or two or three sentences, she has established the transfer of ownership. So This actually turned out to be, I know you're dying to know how this turned out. It actually turned out to be a great delegation. From there, the curriculum was actually decided upon, and they decided that they could incorporate it into the following school year's curriculum. Now, I also want you to realize that not every delegation ends with a beautiful bow on the top of it. You can use this framework and it potentially could not work. There's lots of factors involved here, but it's a good start. So if you can take the diagnostic, understand your leadership style, understand where you're leaking your authority in regards to delegating, take the three-part framework, apply it, and then go and put together authority language around that. You have a better success rate than if you do nothing at all besides keep writing that delegation on a sticky note. So I hope this helps. I'm really looking forward to the workshop and let's get delegating.